This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. We've got some updates on Hurricane Beryl in the Caribbean Sea. Jamaica is experiencing torrential rain and tropical storm force winds from the Category 4 storm. Hurricane Beryl's eye is moving 20 miles south of Jamaica. Jamaica's government says the country is prepared for the hurricane. Authorities activated over 800 shelters. The National Hurricane Center says Beryl will deal a devastating blow to the island even without a direct landfall. Storm surges and flooding are expected tonight. This would be the worst hurricane for Jamaica in 15 years. It's still too early to tell, but South Texas could be in Beryl's trajectory. The region could see heavy rain and flash floods this weekend, depending on where the hurricane hits Mexico tomorrow. Texas Governor Greg Abbott directed state agencies to prepare for the potential impacts. An estimated 13,000 Californians are ordered to evacuate and flee a fire that began only yesterday. The Thompson wildfire has quickly spread across Butte County in Northern California. The fire has burned more than 3,000 acres in the North Orville community. Over 500 firefighters are battling the blaze, which isn't contained at all. It began in a sparsely populated area, but is now moving toward a small town. Local news media and photos shared on social media show houses and vehicles on fire. The cause of the Thompson wildfire is still under investigation. President Biden vowing to stay on the ticket as the White House forcefully denies reports that he's weighing his options. This comes as Biden talks with the vice president over lunch. NTD's Iris Tao has more from the White House.
On an all-hands call with campaign staffers, President Biden makes clear that he's not dropping out. Campaign officials told multiple media outlets that Biden said, quote, "I'm running, no one is pushing me out. I'm in this race to the end, and we're going to win." That's as the White House on Wednesday forcefully denied media reports that Biden was weighing whether or not to stay in the race.
Is President Biden considering stepping down?
Absolutely not.
Are there any discussions about the vice president assuming his duties?
Absolutely not.
Or he's evaluating the
Absolutely
race?
false. That is absolutely false. We asked the president. The president responded directly when asked about this question because we said that we would, and the president said it is absolutely false.
Biden, who had lunch with Vice President Kamala Harris on Wednesday, is ramping up his outreach to fellow Democrats. The White House says those Biden connected with in the past few days include House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. Biden is also meeting with Democratic governors on Wednesday night. And the White House on Wednesday said this about last week's debate performance.
Multiple factors here to consider. There was the travel. The travel led to a cold. We've all been there. What the president did is he pushed through.
This afternoon, Biden's also speaking at a Medal of Honor ceremony for 2 Union soldiers of the American Civil War.
Justice, fairness, unity. George and Philip were willing to shed their blood to make these ideals real.
And on Friday, he's campaigning in Wisconsin, a key battleground state. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Biden is set to meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington soon. This as deadly violence in and around Israel continues to escalate. NTD's international correspondent Ariane Pazdar has a Middle East update.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to travel to Washington later this month. It will be his first trip abroad since the October 7th attacks by Hamas. Now, Netanyahu is scheduled to address all U.S. lawmakers in a joint session by the House and the Senate, and he will also meet President Biden. The trip comes amid tensions between Israel and the U.S. over claims recently made by Netanyahu.
The administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel.
For weeks, we asked our American friends to speed up the shipments. We did it time and time again.
The U.S. has repeatedly denied those claims. And in Israel, a deadly stabbing at a mall on Wednesday. An Israeli soldier was killed and a second person was wounded. Police say they found the house of the attacker.
If it's legal and if the investigation allows it, we are not dismissing the option to destroy this house.
Police arrested family members of the alleged attacker. Authorities say they suspect it was a terror attack. Fighting, meanwhile, is rapidly intensifying on 3 fronts at the same time: Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. Israel's offensive in southern Gaza continues after the military told residents in Khan Yunis to leave their homes earlier this week. The United Nations on Wednesday called it
the largest such order since October, when residents were ordered to evacuate northern Gaza.
In Lebanon, an Israeli strike killed a senior Hezbollah commander on Wednesday morning. Israel's defense minister says this about the escalating tensions in Lebanon.
We are striking Hezbollah very hard every day, and we will also reach a state of full readiness. We prefer an arrangement, but if reality forces us, we will know how to fight.
And in the West Bank, 4 Gazans have been laid to rest after they were killed in an Israeli strike on Tuesday. The Israeli army says the strike hit terrorists hiding in the area. Also in the West Bank, a settlement tracking group on Wednesday said that Israel approved the largest seizure of land in over 3 decades, almost 5 square miles. That's bigger than 2,000 football fields combined. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Earlier, we spoke with David Wormser, Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy, about where things currently stand in the Israel-Hamas war. David Wormser, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
It's great to be on with you. Thanks.
Now, the IDF says that over 1,000 terrorists have been killed in Rafah. These are ones that they know. This doesn't include ones that are buried in the rubble. Given that, where do things currently stand in terms of the Israel-Hamas war?
Yeah, good question. I think that Israel has essentially now destroyed the functional military structure of Hamas. Namely, they can't really operate as significant units against Israel. But what they can do is they break down into little squads that suddenly show up. They can do terrorist attacks. They may still be able to launch missiles here and there. Very few, but some, mostly short range because they're smaller. They may have a very, very limited ability to continue to produce a few missiles here and there. So the Israelis, I think, have more or less shut down this as a problem from October 7th levels. What they still face, though, is they need to keep Gaza quite restricted, which means they need to keep the border area between Egypt and Gaza under their control, so that because Hamas still exists as an organization, and it still has enough territory and enough people who would join it that it can reconstitute its force very rapidly within a few months or year. And the know-how is there. So the Israelis really have to constrict what goes in and controls very carefully, that it can't be used to build weapons, build new tunnels, and they have to maintain security control over the area, which means they have to be able to go anywhere in that territory at any time to arrest somebody, to take down a tunnel that's starting to be built, a missile factory that comes. So it's now small insurgency warfare that Israel faces. And of course, they don't have back their hostages, all their hostages yet.
On that note, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has indicated privately that he could accept involvement by the Palestinian Authority in a post-war Gaza. Now, this is according to a report. Given that, what are the likely next steps for Israel here?
I think it'd be very difficult for them to really accept a Palestinian Authority for a couple reasons. One is they see the Palestinian Authority becoming increasingly hostile. They never really had peace with the Palestinian Authority, which is mostly now in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria. So the Israelis, I don't think, trust that not to produce another threatening force that arises in Gaza. So I don't think they can really let them in on that level. The second thing is I don't think they really want to reward Hamas for doing this war by essentially creating a new Palestinian government. But most importantly, I think the Israelis feel they need to maintain security control over the territory. So I don't believe that really the Palestinian Authority is in the cards. The Israelis much would prefer to work with local powers in the area, families, clans, tribes, more traditional structures, and create a very bottom-up governing structure that eventually has more and more power, but at the beginning is really under their direct occupation.
And while the conflict with Hamas drags on, Israel has now been pivoting for a potential conflict with Iran-backed Hezbollah in the north. Now, how do you read Israel's ability to deter its enemies?
I think Israeli deterrence, first of all, because of what happened on October 7th, the Israelis believed they had a great deal of deterrence. And what they discovered was that what they calculate as the values that the enemy has, and that therefore you can deter, we're not there. The Hamas Authority didn't look at the world the way the Israelis thought they looked at them. So the deterrence collapsed. The second thing is Israel was seen to be weak after that attack. So, and third, everybody in Israel, as well as the Middle East as a whole, knows that behind all this was Iran. And Iran has not really suffered at all or suffered any degree of pain or suffering from this war. They sort of sit back in their armchair and wage war at Israel from a distance through their proxies. So the Israelis are having a tough time deterring the proxies, and there's no regional deterrence set up for Israel against Iran. And that's an equation the Israelis are fundamentally worried about and want to address.
David Wormser, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
The Chinese regime's systematic forced harvesting of organs from living prisoners of conscience. There are many victims, but there have been no known survivors until now. NTD's Jack Bradley has the story.
Likely the only known survivor of the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting recounts his experiences right here in Washington, D.C.
Today is about a brave man, Mr. C. Chen Peiming.
Peiming Chung says Chinese authorities attempted to forcibly remove his organs in an operation once in 2004 and again in 2006. Without his consent, they took parts of his lung and liver, which can be used for transplants in pediatric patients.
I have been arbitrarily arrested and persecuted by the CCP 5 times. In December 2001, I was sentenced to 8 years in prison in a show trial. Afterwards, I have endured more tortures, including my organs being forcefully removed.
Chung is an adherent of the spiritual practice Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa. But because of the practice's popularity, the Chinese regime launched a brutal persecution against it in 1999, which continues to this day. Falun Gong practitioners have been imprisoned, tortured, and killed. In March 2020, London's China Tribunal found that, quote, forced organ harvesting has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply.
Great Britain is poised to enter a new political era. Voters there are expected to oust Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. If so, that would bring an end to a 14-year reign of conservative rule in the country. Current polls show the opposition Labour Party is expected to win, bringing in a centre-left government headed by former lawyer Keir Starmer. The party leader, who reaches 326 constituencies, will become prime minister and then form a government. King Charles III would then have to approve the formation of a new government. That is typically just a formality, as the king would never be expected to oppose the decision to hold an election or contradict his prime minister. And we have some breaking news. Just now, a federal judge in Texas has delayed a ban on non-compete agreements for workers. Companies often ask workers to sign such agreements to promise they won't join the employer's rivals or launch competing businesses. The ban was approved by the Federal Trade Commission in April and set to take effect in early September. But now it's been delayed by a federal judge who says the FTC lacked the authority to adopt such broad rules. The judge says that the delay is temporary and the court will rule on the merits of the ban before the end of August. 1 in 5 U.S. workers are bound by a non-compete clause in their current jobs, according to the FTC. Americans across the country will gather tomorrow to celebrate Independence Day. In Washington, D.C., hundreds of thousands are expected to gather on the National Mall to commemorate the nation's founding. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this year's celebrations.
Preparations are almost complete for the 4th of July celebrations in our nation's capital. Right behind me, we can see the center stage of what will be Thursday's main event. But the commemorative activities will begin since 9 in the morning.
We, the people, to say, Huzzah! Again, Huzzah!
The National Archives will begin with a reading of the Declaration of Independence at 9 a.m., followed by the presentation of the colors and a performance by the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. And throughout the day, children can meet historic figures, sign the Declaration of Independence, and other fun craft activities. At 11:45 a.m., the National Independence Parade will begin. It spans from Constitution and 7th all the way through the 17th Street. We can expect to see marching bands, fife and drum corps, floats, military units, and more. At least one band or unit from each of the 50 states will be represented in the parade. In the afternoon, President Joe Biden will host U.S. military service members in the White House for a barbecue. And the main event in D.C. will be the concert at the Capitol steps. Right behind me, we can see the center stage. On Thursday, the West Lawn will open to the public at 3 p.m., but the concert does not start till 8 p.m. The famous fireworks will begin at 8 p.m. from the Lincoln Memorial and will last 17 minutes. Authorities expect at least 700,000 people to come to the National Mall on July 4th. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Tomorrow will mark the 248th anniversary of the founding of the United States. Folks from across the country will celebrate this day with some family time, fireworks, and other holiday activities. NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall to find out what makes people proud to be Americans.
How do you plan on celebrating the 4th of July?
Family and friends, having a picnic by the backyard.
Man, we're going to start off tonight going to DC United game, and then we're going to hit up the Nationals game tomorrow.
I'm going to be going to the Nationals baseball game, and then I'll be watching the firework display at night.
We just had a new family member born into the family yesterday that's at the local hospital, so we gathered and had some time.
We're going to check out some other monuments around town.
We're going to be having a family picnic and watching fireworks together most of the day.
And probably eat burgers and potato salad and celebrate America.
Do a barbecue with family and friends and watch a fireworks show over the bay.
And hot dog or hamburger?
Oh, hot dog. Hot dog for sure. Hot dog. Oh, I feel like the toppings, like the ketchup and mustard, go on better.
Just nothing like a good old hamburger.
Hot dog.
Burger. A turkey burger is actually really healthy for you.
Burger.
Yeah. Hot dogs are just like reprocessed meat. It's gross.
What makes you proud to be an American?
Well, I think being American is just fabric of my being. Just be a part of like my family history, who fought in the Korean War.
Right, just a reflection on the history and the sacrifice that it took to build this amazing place.
I'm glad I have my freedom. I'm very blessed.
Everything that we have and our privileges and rights.
Well, man, greatest country in the world, You can do whatever you want in this country. You can be whoever you want to be.
Just knowing that all my kids, no matter their gender, what they do, will have opportunities available to them.
We would love to move to America one day. He proposed to me in Washington last year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, in July. And now we're getting married in 2 weeks.
Nice.
We came back to celebrate. We love this country and hopefully we'll be American citizens one day.
It is almost the 4th of July, and New York City is expecting hundreds of thousands of fun seekers. Amid the excitement, the New York Police Department is reminding the public to stay safe. NTD's Fiona G has the details.
New York City is gearing up for the 48th annual Macy's 4th of July fireworks, which is the largest fireworks show in the entire U.S. And the NYPD says that it is prepared to keep spectators safe.
Uniformed members in the street, you'll see our K-9 deployment, some of our counterterrorism deployment. You'll see members at our entry points doing soft screenings, making sure people are not bringing in anything that's unauthorized. But rest assured, the men and women of the NYPD will be out there, and we fully anticipate another safe and successful celebration.
There will be increased police presence in areas of higher traffic. Trains will also have extra patrols. Officials urge everyone to use public transit, which will have increased service. The NYPD will also be deploying drones as an additional layer of security. Mitigation systems are also in place to handle any unauthorized drones in the city's airspace.
It's not like in the movies where you shoot it out of the sky. No, it is safe for mass gatherings. That's the whole point, and it's quite technologically advanced.
New York City has plenty of events for Independence Day, which officials expect will attract hundreds of thousands of people. Apart from the Macy's fireworks along the Hudson River, there will be other pyrotechnics shows at Coney Island and Jones Beach. If crowding along the shorelines to watch the spectacle isn't your thing, you can visit a rooftop bar or hop on a river cruise to wine and dine for a quieter fireworks experience. Coney Island will also be hosting the famous Nathan's annual hot dog eating contest. Some museums will host Independence Day themed exhibits, while other iconic buildings will display proud red, white, and blue decorations, perfect for an Instagram photo. There is something for everyone this 4th of July in New York City. So whether you're going to one of the many planned festivities in the city tomorrow or staying at home to barbecue in your own backyard, always keep safety in mind and have a wonderful 4th of July. Fiona G., NTD News.
Close to 200 wind turbines planned for the coast of New Jersey, enough to power 5 million homes. A big move for an industry that faces many headwinds.
Up to 195 wind turbines have been greenlit by the Biden administration. These photos show what they'd look like 8 miles from the Jersey coast. The administration says they could eventually power 5 million homes. Here's the developer CEO speaking to a New Jersey station.
Everything that gets developed at scale needs to be done in a responsible manner. And we have done over 40 surveys just to get the permits and the record of decision that we got through today over the course of many years.
But energy expert Jason Isaac says projects like these lead to higher costs. He says nuclear, coal, oil, and natural gas are still more competitive.
This will probably be another project that doesn't get built because of the astronomical cost.
Professor John Hall says there are challenges with wind energy.
The levelized cost of energy, you're always trying to get that lower and lower so that we can compete. We really need renewable energy.
He and other researchers are working hard to address them. Robin Schaefer is the president of Protect Our Coast, New Jersey, an organization formed to oppose wind projects.
These are going to be built in migratory corridors that whales and dolphins have been using for thousands of years. And so much is unknown about what these enormous skyscrapers being constructed in the ocean will do.
He says the project will hurt wildlife, reduce tourism, and raise energy prices. Schaefer says he's especially concerned with damage to the environment and wildlife ecosystems. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management says the project would not result in undue harm to environmental resources. NTD reached out to the Bureau but did not hear back before airtime.
That project was greenlit after months of opposition from local conservationists concerned about the impact to sea life. Whales and dolphins are a particular concern. Organizations such as Protect Our Coast, New Jersey claim that the infrasound tools used in surveying for the wind turbines are disrupting the sea creatures' navigation, leading to increased fatal vessel strikes. While officials have denied the correlation, concern for the marine life is growing. Joining me now to discuss is Lisa Leno's Executive Director of Industrial Wind Action. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you have spoken extensively about the correlation between whale deaths and the infrasound tools used in turbine surveying. Explain that for us.
Yes, absolutely. So over the course of the last few years, really beginning in 2016, the offshore wind activity involved sonar, basically blasting the seabed with a lot of noise in order to get a sense of, be able to map the seabed in preparation for large-scale construction. And that noise really, we believe, has contributed significantly to an uptick in whale deaths that have happened from Maine down to Virginia, where the majority of that offshore wind development has been happening.
And give us a sense of those numbers. How many whale deaths and strandings have there been?
Yes, absolutely. So the species that has really taken the largest hit is the humpback whale. Prior to 2016, there were roughly 8 humpback whales that died per year, according to NOAA's own information. This is the agency responsible for tracking and protecting marine life. Just 8, of which 1.4 of those whales, they were able to attribute the death to vessel strikes. That, fast forward from 2016 onwards, we've seen an average of 25 or more humpback whales killed in the period from 2016 to 2023. In 2023 alone, 37 humpback whales died. Most of those we do not have a cause of death on. It's not vessel strikes. Nothing really has changed in terms of vessel activity. It's not the fish entanglement or gear entanglement, which is the two things that NOAA and the federal government point to as causes of death. Those really have not changed from 2016 to 2024, 2023. What has changed is a significant amount of construction and development and pre-construction activity, and that all happening within the areas that the whales live and migrate through.
Now, officials have denied this correlation. Tell us, are there any government authorities or independent groups investigating these whale deaths and this potential correlation?
Unfortunately, the federal government has dug in, along with the environmental groups. They're insisting that the cause of death has nothing to do with the offshore wind activity. So there's primary research being done by groups like mine and others that are looking at the whale deaths. We do not have the facility to determine causal, as the wind energy development causing the death of these whales. The only thing that we can say is that when the development started to happen, again, beginning with the seabed mapping and now through to construction, that's when the whales started dying in large numbers. And it's untenable that the federal government has looked the other way. They've insisted on pointing to vessel strikes and fishing gear entanglement as cause of death when they know that is not what is causing this large number of whales to die.
And is there an alternative way of surveying the waters that doesn't use this infrasound technology?
Unfortunately, there is nothing that they can do. That the sonar is the only way to do to conduct the seabed mapping. And of course, ultimately, and what they are doing now, and what they approved off the coast of New Jersey this week, is the construction of hundreds, and eventually it'll be thousands of wind turbines. These are permanent structures embedded in the sea. In the case of the project off the coast of New Jersey, with 1,000-foot turbines from the water surface upwards. They're massive, and they're separated by 1 nautical mile at most from one turbine to the next. That's what the whales are going to have to swim through. There are no mitigations put in place or adopted by NOAA to protect the whales or other marine life from living with these turbines. They're almost certainly going to be displaced from this area, and where will they go? They've been traveling this route for migration, for feeding, for breeding, et cetera, for thousands of years. And now these structures are going to be permanently put in the way. And there's no way to mitigate for that. And that's actually language directly from NOAA scientists.
There has been a lot of outcry from locals over this issue. What are locals calling for here, and what response have those calls been met with?
Actually, what they're asking for is simply to do the study and to validate with certainty that the whales are not dying as a result of the offshore wind. It's incredible when you read the documents that NOAA has put out and the BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which permits these projects. There's uncertainty everywhere. They're saying we cannot be sure whether these projects are going to have a direct impact, or we know they will have a direct impact. But they will find that the whales will ultimately adapt to it, I guess, or we'll have to measure for those impacts and mitigate after the fact. You cannot mitigate for something that you don't understand. And that's the situation we're in. We cannot correct for the harms to the whale or other marine life until we know what the harms are. So that's the position NOAA has taken and BOEM has taken. Build the projects, figure out what the harms are, and mitigate after the fact. We don't see a way that you can mitigate for hundreds right now to thousands of towers constructed in the ocean. And if I could just add one thing, when you think about how the environmentalists complained about single cell towers, non-animated, just a single tower on a ridgeline, and how that concerned them about habitat displacement, think about what we're talking about here, the industrialization of our oceans on a level never seen before, and it's happening at a rapid pace.
Lisa Lanos, Executive Director at Industrial Wind Action, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
A Mississippi federal court ruled on Tuesday that the state's congressional district map discriminated against black voters. In the unanimous ruling, the 3-judge panel sided with the plaintiff's claims that the map unlawfully diluted black voting strength. The Mississippi State Conference of the NAACP and black voters had argued that under the Voting Rights Act, the 38% black population could be distributed across 7 majority bloc Senate and House districts. The court partly agreed, finding that 3 of the proposed districts could be redrawn. The state's GOP-led legislature will now have to redraw them, after which special electors will be held in those districts. If you're planning to hit the hiking trails over the long weekend, how can you and your family make sure you're all safe while enjoying the great outdoors? An experienced ranger shares some tips with NTD's David Lamb.
Hiking involves moving through trails or footpaths. Chris Baresi shares some of his wisdom from over 20 years as a ranger in Northern California.
One of my favorite ways to enjoy a hike like this is to take my time, take a look at the views around me, notice the small things on the side of the trail, the different plants and flowers, the butterflies, birds. Listen to what you're hearing in nature, bird calls, maybe a woodpecker pecking, the sound of the breeze. So really take it all in. Some people call it forest bathing.
Chris, with the Regional Open Space District, walked us through part of the Fremont Older Preserve.
Most of the trails in this preserve are multi-use, so horses, bikes, dogs on leash.
Wildlife is abundant on trails, but people do get concerned about some animals, such as mountain lions.
And what I tell them is be aware, but don't be afraid. In my many years patrolling trails, I've only seen a handful, and usually it was darting across the road in front of me, or a visitor had discovered one and reported it to us. They tend to avoid people for the most part, but if you do encounter one, as our signs say, you want to look big, you want to make noise, you don't want to turn your back or run, and you want to try to just, get the mountain lion to turn around and say, I don't need to deal with this person because we're not their intended prey in the first place. So,
one thing to watch out for are ticks, which can cause Lyme disease and give flu-like symptoms. The CDC said in 2022 there were around 20 cases per 100,000 people.
What we recommend for that is always wear long pants, tuck in your shirt, light-colored clothing, and definitely check yourself for ticks, especially if you ever go off trail or are in an area walking through tall grass.
Chris says rattlesnake bites are uncommon and spider bites even less common.
But any venomous type of bite, snake bite especially, stay calm. You want to keep your heart rate down. You want to call 911 right away because you don't know how bad the reaction is going to be. There are some myths out there about trying to suck venom out or tourniquet around a limb or something like that. You don't want to do any of that. The things that are going to get you out here are probably heat, dehydration, environmental factors more than any of the critters.
So what kind of gear should people pack?
It can get very warm out here. We don't supply water at our preserve, so they need to bring plenty of water. Extra food, they want to protect themselves from the sun, so decent clothing, good hiking shoes, for sturdy shoes, boots if they have them, sunscreen, sunglasses, insect repellent if they need that.
Chris also says to bring a sweatshirt if you plan to stay past sunset, as conditions can change quickly.
So here we have the poison oak leaves, which you can see is bundled in 3, and it's tricky because it blends right in with next to this oak tree with its regular leaves, so it's coming from the ground, wrapping up around this tree.
Yeah, so poison oak is very common throughout our preserves in the woodlands. You could see that they come in leaves of 3, so the old saying is leaves of 3, let it be. If you touch it, some people don't get it. But for other people, most people, it's just a mild rash that will run its course. It can spread by your itching it and moving the oil.
Apps and websites also have key information about different trails. Ryan McCauley says knowing before you go is important.
So the Trail Explorer app was actually suggested by a lot of our visitors who wanted more information about what sorts of trails they can hike and what sort of level of difficulty. So Mid-Penn took that feedback and started to walk every 250 miles of trails to get that information about how steep it is, how shaded it is, what the surface material is like.
What's one of the best ways for you to enjoy the hike, make it more meaningful?
I think just making sure I unplug, I try not to check my phone during the hike. I think I'm always kind of on the run, and I like to kind of unplug and listen to nature, kind of be with the people I'm with and be really present.
Lastly, the leave no trace behind principles.
Pack it in, pack it out is part of that philosophy. Bring in all your food and water that you need, and then bring all your trash out with you. But also don't pick flowers. Don't go off trail where you're going to stomp native vegetation and leave a path that you've been there.
Despite hiking uphill during the summer heat, the view up here and the breeze and fresh air is definitely worth it. Reporting in Silicon Valley, David Lamb, NTD News.
And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on today, but let's start in the NBA, where LeBron James has reportedly decided to stay with the Lakers, agreeing on a new contract. What's been the reaction to this?
I think most people expected this, especially if this team, drafted his son in the second round. Was it going to leave him behind all of a sudden? That would have been quite a development if he had. So he'll reportedly sign a 2-year deal with just over $100 million, with the second year being a player option. Now, this is according to ESPN, which cited anonymous sources. NTD has been unable to verify them. But if true, he'll get a no-trade clause, and that's important because back in February when the Lakers were struggling, there were reports that the Warriors actually tried to trade for LeBron James. Obviously, he didn't get traded, but this seems to be where he wants to be. And I'll be interested if new head coach J.J. Redick can remake this team into a title contender. They just won a championship 4 years ago, and they still have the two best players from that team, in LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Now, the Lakers also introduced LeBron's son, Bronny James, after announcing his signing, though Coach J.J. Redick was quick to point out that Bronny had, quote, earned it. Is there a prevailing opinion that he might not be where he is without his father?
Yeah, that's been put out plenty there recently. A year ago, Bronny's stock actually was a lot higher. A year ago, he was a high school All-American as a senior, very highly touted player coming out of high school. Then he had that cardiac arrest last summer that delayed his freshman year at USC. When he did play, he really never got going. But it's not out of the ordinary for a once highly touted player to put up some underwhelming numbers as a freshman, declare for the NBA draft anyway, and then get drafted, usually in the second round. But I will say I was a little surprised that the contract he signed was for 4 years with the first 3 guaranteed. Most second-round picks don't get guaranteed contracts at all. Now, this is according to The Athletic, which also cited anonymous sources that we haven't been able to verify. But either way, he's only 19, so I don't think the Lakers will really know what they have for a couple of years still.
Shifting gears to baseball, Dodgers star Shohei Ohtani says he won't participate in the upcoming home run derby. Did he give a reason?
Yes, he said he's still in the middle of rehab from his off-season arm surgery, although I must say it doesn't look like it's affected his hitting at all. He's not pitching this year, but he leads the National League in home runs hit 27, runs scored, total bases, slugging percentage, wins above replacement, and he's close in other categories. I think it's safe to say he's on pace for yet another MVP, this time as just a designated hitter, and that'll be the first time a DH wins it. Now, as far as the home run derby goes, that's not the top concern for players. This is an all-star game exhibition, part of the festivities for that, so of course it doesn't count in the standings.
Moving to tennis news, Andy Murray has announced this will be his final Wimbledon appearance, as he'll be retiring after the Olympics. What competition will he be in?
It'll be doubles competition only. Now, he recently had a cyst on his spine that he had surgery on to remove, and he decided he wasn't quite ready to play a singles competition. Now, Murray has won Wimbledon twice. He also won the U.S. Open one time. But people forget there used to be a big four with Murray included, along with Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, and Novak Djokovic. Now, Murray's play eventually tapered off. He battled a major hip injury that eventually forced him into at least a temporary retirement. But before that, he also won 2 individual Olympic gold medals in 2012 and 2016. And that's one thing that's eluded both Federer and Djokovic. So he'll definitely be remembered as one of the all-time greats.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.